Hello everyone,
And welcome to Chameleon Conversations.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Desiree.
Today we're going to have a conversation about happy, joy.
Yes, who doesn't want more happiness and joy in their lives, especially right now? Today we're going to start off by describing not the dictionary definitions, but our definitions of happiness and joy for the sake of this chameleon conversation. Happiness is the warm, fuzzy, excited feeling you can temporarily experience, most often triggered by external means, such as places, events, certain people, a job, any sort of tangible, measurable, material type thing.
And joy is a similar warm, fuzzy feeling of contentment that's more consistent and long-lasting because it is cultivated internally. It's often worked over time by way of things like processing emotions, making peace with, and having grace for who you are, how you are, and where you are.
So, would you consider yourself a happy, joy-filled person?
Yeah, I think for the most part.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I'm a pretty happy gal. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, where would you rate yourself?
I think around a 7.
Yeah, I would say probably the same, like 7, 8, probably an 8 maybe. I think I'm happier than, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe we're kind of both 7s, I think.
Now, have you always been this way?
I would have to say for me, no. I think I used to think that I was. But over time, I really noticed how often I would kind of sort of complain or maybe focus on the negative aspects of a situation or even people. What about you? Have you always been a 7?
No, I think over the years I've gotten higher on the scale. I think I've found my sweet spot in the sense of finding my joy and happiness, but I obviously have room to grow.
For sure. I think we all do. Can you describe a standout moment of growth?
Yes, I would say it was senior year. I can't, peg a certain moment, but it was senior year that really changed for me in the sense of owning my joy and happiness and not relying on anyone else for it. I think before that point, I relied on how people perceived me or how, just my surroundings affected my joy and happiness. And there was a big shift. I don't know what it was, but yeah, I just didn't care as much.
Puberty. Just kidding.
That's what it was. How about you? Can you describe a standout moment of growth?
A standout moment for me probably goes back to when I met this girl. Let's call her, Kira. Kira was this stunningly beautiful, multi-talented, super exciting person. I began to unconsciously imitate her. It's probably the natural chameleon in me. She got her nose pierced, so I got my nose pierced. She got a tattoo, I got a tattoo. And eventually, as we humans do, I became jealous of her magical perfect little life. She just always seemed to have everything happen for her. But everything changed for me though when I took the time to really reflect on why her life seemed to be so wonderful all the time. And it boiled down to just a handful of things. She was a planner. She would get an idea and then she would just talk to whoever she needed to get it done, and she would just execute the plans. She made room in her life for these things. She saved up, took time off, left work early, whatever she needed to do to prioritize these things that she valued. She was spontaneous, and all that anyone needs to do to be spontaneous is to simply say yes to people, opportunities, events, new things. The more difficult part of what she would do is she would show up when she would say yes to those things, and she would follow through with those plans. Lastly, she often challenged herself by tackling new hobbies. More often than not, she would just push herself outside of her comfort zone. All of these things were attainable. I began to shift my mentality from a mentality of lack to a mentality of taking action for myself and ownership over my own life. That shift in my mindset, that moment of growth, helped me tremendously, even with my relationship with social media. I stopped comparing and being jealous or critical and chose to be inspired instead. Sure enough, I started having adventures and stories of my own, and naturally people started talking about my life the same way that I used to talk about hers.
Yeah, I think that's something very important that people often forget, that happiness and joy don't just happen to you. It takes intention and a great deal of work. Even the most rich person can be incredibly unhappy.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so what are some ways you have worked on and been intentional towards your own happiness and joy?
I'd say a major one for me is my job. I was very successful at my last job, and I was even offered a pretty big promotion, but at that same time I was pursuing this current job and auditioning for it, and despite all the obstacles of failing multiple auditions, I kept pursuing and I eventually persevered, and now I am, I think, much happier for it. I love going to work every day. I have a lot less stress, and yeah, I think that is a really good part of the foundation that helps me feel happier and more joyous every single day.
Yeah, I think it's a part of your personality too, like to look at your job that way, grateful, and I think maybe it has to do with because you had to work very hard to get it. It was something that you had to put work into to achieve.
Value it more.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'd say for me, I've poured a lot of intention into planning, and that is huge for me. Lists and calendars have become my favorite tools. Constant evaluation and reevaluation. You have to look at your relationships, what you're putting into your spirit in regards to like music and movies and TV, social media. Your finances, you have to look at your finances. Money doesn't make you happy, but it certainly helps. I've heard that before. And as we know, as we are kind of working at that and being better at our finances, there is more freedom and security which help with your happiness and joy. You have to evaluate yourself and really face your own bad habits and toxic behaviors. There's a quote I read recently. It says, "Shout out to all the people recognizing their own toxic traits and doing their best to unlearn them." This is huge. And then after evaluating, you have to put the time and effort into communicating what you've evaluated. And you have to communicate well. I think we work on this a lot.
Yeah.
By not yelling, accusing, or saying mean things. No one's going to listen to you if you don't learn how to communicate well.
You also have to listen. Others so often see blind spots within ourselves that we don't see. We have to have people in our lives that know us and say no to us.
Yeah, that was something I had to learn. That was not easy for me to let people, A, to let people in, and then B, to allow them to voice their opinions sometimes about you and your character, and that is super hard to hear, but incredibly valuable, like extremely valuable. Yeah. If you even just take it into consideration and don't just say, no, that's not me, that's not who I am, you know, like if you even just sit with it and try to see if maybe you reflect those things. So that is so helpful. I guess then after that comes the most difficult part. Having patience with yourself and others to learn, process, and implement any changes that need to be done. If others don't choose to participate or change, which I have to say, I have to warn you, that's often the case, you have to heal to a place where that's okay too. We can't control people, we only have control over ourselves. Another quote that I absolutely love and brings me great comfort is a quote by Robert Madu, and he says, "Life becomes easier when you learn to accept an apology you never got."
That's good. So what are some things that can steal or hinder happiness and joy?
I would say that probably boils down to placing your happiness and joy in external things. I see so often people connect their identity and like self-worth to their job a lot, or to how much money they make, and it's like almost like their identity. And I think that is so incredibly dangerous. That is not a firm foundation. You can love people, you can be kind to people, you can express yourself in so many ways. To attach your identity to a job, that's so dangerous. I like to tell people that even like the greatest business person in the world who develops like the perfect business plan and is doing everything right, there are still variables beyond your control, like the economy crashing or things like that, where even if you've done everything right, it doesn't guarantee that happiness, perfect, joyful outcome. So you can't place your joy in things like that. Things that can easily be stolen away. Even people will fail you. I tell people all the time, I will fail you. Like, I'm going to do my best, but I'm gonna say things wrong. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to offend you. Not on purpose for the most part, but it's going to happen. So you can't place your joy, even in a marriage, you can't place that in your spouse.
Yeah.
They cannot be the sole source of your happiness and joy.
Well, and it's not a pessimistic point of view either. It's not like, well, everyone's gonna fail me, this world's gonna fail me.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's just your focal point and what you hold on to.
I would say knowing your value. Like, as a human being, you have value. No matter what you do, how good you are at anything. Like, your value, you have to know your worth.
Yeah. It is really easy to focus on the negative, focus on the dark things in life. When you shift that and focus on being humble and gracious and thankful for no matter how small of a thing it is, it can really turn your day, your mindset, your current emotions around.
Yeah.
It's really easy to fall into just the dark kind of pit of life.
It's like a snowball, or like that becomes an avalanche. Like, it's so easy for it to be one thing and then just another thing, and then it just becomes this list.
You just get
and then
buried in it.
Yeah, then you get overwhelmed and buried. I think you're right. You have to start romanticizing your life. You have to find joy in the things that you eat and drink and listen to and
the people you're with. I mean, if you stop and thought about right now, 5 things you're thankful for, I think you could surprise yourself every minute how many things you could think of that you're thankful for.
Oh my gosh,
I think that people don't do that enough. I think if we did that on the daily, even a few times daily, I just imagine that would turn your day around. Each time you just sit and just be thankful for everything in your life, really. You kind of touched on this before, but like, you have to work at it. Happiness and joy is like any sort of training and learning. And what I've learned in the military is in stressful or intense situations, you fall to your lowest point of training.
Absolutely. I like when you said the training, because I think you have to practice these things.
Some other hindrances for joy and happiness, I'd say, for me especially, poorly managed schedule or overloaded schedule, and then procrastination. Just in general, things that can weigh on you and steal that joy and happiness.
Yeah, not adequate sleep or nourishment.
Food.
Getting hangry, that can steal your joy real quick. Those are just a few of the many things. We are multifaceted, very just diverse and beautiful and complex human beings. So after talking about all of these things that can steal our joy, I would like to take some time to talk about things that you and I find happiness in and joy in. And to make it kind of fun, let's do it in the 5 different senses plus Desiree's bonus 6th sense.
Oh,
yeah. I see dead people. No, yeah, so you have your taste, your smell, hearing, sight, and touch, I think. And then the sixth one that I would like to add is your spirit, your spirituality kind of.
Your soul.
Yeah. So, why don't we start with taste? What are some tastes? We're big foodies.
I mean, pizza.
Yeah, I was gonna say pizza.
Mexican food of any shape and size.
Oh, absolutely. An ice cold beverage on a hot day.
Oh, yeah. Mountain Dew.
Ew! Not sponsored. Not sponsored.
Cheer wine. It's a southern soda. Super good though.
Yeah, I love chamomile or lavender. Chamomile is the one I have right now. Just a good tea with cream.
Yep.
It's kind of like, I know I've never really had warm milk, and I don't know why they say that, but we have tea and cream in the evening, and it kind of gives you that feeling that people are talking about when they reference warm milk. It's that comforting, cozy, warm beverage.
Yeah, it's like drinking a hug.
Yeah, I guess.
Soup.
Oh yeah, you're a big
soup of any kind.
Ramen, pho, any sort of. I like tomato-based soups, cheese, ice cream, anything sort of decadent like pastries and chocolates. Life is, hard as it is, and if you are trying to be healthy, which I think is incredibly important, you can't be that person that like takes all of the flavorful good stuff out completely. That's just not a happy life, not a joy-filled life.
Nope.
So good food matters, and I think your attention to it. It's so easy to just throw something on the TV and just begin to eat without even realizing it, and our meal is gone and it's done and it's over before we've even taken a moment to appreciate it. And I think it really increases happiness and joy when you are intentional about taking those moments to savor just some. It doesn't have to be every single bite, but just some of your meal, just taking that moment to be like, wow, this is good. And experiment with spices. There are so many spices in this world. Go to a spice section. Pick one you've never tried before and just buy it. And look up some recipes that include it, and I think your happiness will increase.
Ermagerd Spurs.
Spurs. I haven't heard that meme in like forever. Ermagerd. Oh my goodness. Okay, so that was taste. What about smells? What are some smells that bring you joy, Christopher?
Wood. Fresh cut wood makes me very happy.
That's true.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what kind, but fresh cut wood, leather.
So manly. Your smells are so manly.
Well, they smell good. I have a lot of nostalgia with gasoline and
weird,
like
but I've heard
that
before.
Bike exhaust.
Because of dirt biking.
Because we used to dirt bike all the time, and like your clothes smell like it, and like all the stuff, and so I just have a lot of, I think, just fond memories of that.
I think that kind of could be akin to like campfire smell. Like it's smoky, but it reminds you of when you were camping.
Yeah, and campfire. Yeah, that also too. Just like burning wood, like. I just have a lot of good memories with camping, so I think that is why all those kind of.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why lemongrass is one of my favorite smells, is because it brings me instantly back to our honeymoon in Cambodia, where that smell was, for some reason, it was everywhere. I think it was in a lot of their like cleaning products or like incense that they would place around.
I think it was a common incense because it was always, you'd always see it in like a corner. It'd be like a little tiny spire of smoke, and and I think it was just common that in almost every building it just smelled like lemongrass.
It was everywhere. So like on my honeymoon just smelled like lemongrass, and that's what I remember.
Brought to you by lemongrass.
Yeah, and it was wonderful. It always brings me joy to smell that smell. I also love anything that kind of smells like fall, so cinnamon, vanilla, or baked goods.
Nutmeg.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, quite possibly my favorite smell, and this is the Washingtonian in me, but it's just rain on asphalt, like that kind of smell of rain in the air.
Yeah.
I love that smell.
What about touch? What are some things that Like feel.
A soft, fuzzy blanket. I think I love the feeling of, is it cashmere? I think like a good cashmere. It feels like very silky soft. It's usually like you find it in like a scarf or something like that. That's you can just tell the difference when your fingertips touch it. What else? What's a hard one?
Yeah. I like the feel of wood in my hand. Like,
you just really like wood.
I
like
love
just
wood.
Bottom line, Chris loves wood.
Chris Hart wood. If you carved into
wood,
it would just be Chris. If it's something carved or...
Oh, you love game pieces, like tokens and anything that has to do with...
Tactile.
Really quality gaming cards. Like that are, what do you call those?
Linen finish.
Oh, yeah. You could just tell a quality gaming card in between your fingertips rather than just like a cheap deck of cards that you pick up from like a gas station or something. What are sights that you just feel so much joy and happiness when you see? Me. I'm just kidding.
No, also. Forests, evergreen forests for sure. And mountains, and together or apart.
Agreed.
It's just the Pacific Northwest in the...
We both come from Washington State, so I think mountains and like big fluffy green trees are very just deeply woven into our DNA.
Very comforting.
Yeah, but I didn't realize that until I came here, where I realized that they have a lot of trees, but they look kind of craggly.
Sad.
Not angry. I would say angry rather than sad.
Like the Wizard of Oz trees.
Yeah, they're gonna throw things at you.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that there was a real difference in a type of... I just thought I liked trees, but I can go to heavily wooded areas here, and there is something about it that is not quite the same. Oh, we haven't done sounds.
Sounds.
Oh, sound man. What are some sounds that make you happy and bring you joy?
Atmospheres, in the sense of like being in a forest, that kind of rustling branches and nature sounds, whether that's artificial or natural. I like listening to those. I like putting myself kind of in that world or that area.
Yeah.
And I will often listen to it on my phone.
Yeah, we'll listen to it when we go to sleep. We put on rain sounds or like a thunderstorm.
Helps us go to sleep.
Yeah.
So
it really does. It really does. Oh, I really love lo-fi chill playlists. I seek those out on YouTube all the time. I also look for instrumental soaking worship. Literally, if you type in those 3 words, you'll probably come across the video that I listen to. It's like 3 hours long. And I go start my coffee and I begin to do my to-do list and I turn on that soaking worship track and it just floods my house with this peaceful sound.
Yeah, it's kind of calming instrumental music.
Yeah, it's really helpful. Jazz music will do the same for me, kind of just put me into this calm, kind of peaceful, happy state.
Yeah.
Not all jazz music.
Yeah.
Some of that can be very busy.
That's like, I also like listening to like cinema scores.
Cinematic music.
But like some are very intense and I've weeded those out because those just kind
It's
of
amazing how sound can affect your joy and your happiness. I mean, think about it. When you're frustrated and you're trying to like navigate someplace to go, especially in your car, you turn the radio down. Because you can't, for some reason, think.
Nope. Yeah,
when you're in that kind of state, it's amazing how powerful sound and music can be.
I think my favorite, though, is probably a campfire.
Crackling.
Yeah, that, if I could, like, do all 5 senses, 6 senses, all 6 senses in one, it would be sitting at a campfire for like hours on end.
Lastly, I would say spiritual. There is a component that I think people so often forget to nurture. What I do to bring that part of myself joy and happiness is often things like prayer. When you pray and get things out and before the Lord, that helps me. Probably the number one thing that helps me in most situations.
I think the community aspect of it as well, like whether you're sharing a meal with people or just sitting down with no distractions, just talking about life.
Oh yeah, some of the best spiritual happy moments are shared with others.
Yeah.
I do feel like that is probably the sense that keeps us most grounded and like on sort of a firm foundation.
Most consistent.
Yeah, and unshakable. I think your soul's happiness is kind of the most important because you can, in an accident, lose your eyes. You can lose your sense of smell. You can burn your tongue so bad that it loses its ability to taste a lot of those flavors. Yeah, any one of those variables, your finances, your job, whatever, those things can all kind of fracture and are subject to so much change. But your spirit, like the human spirit, is with you wherever you go.
Yep, you take it with you.
Yeah, somebody said the quote is, wherever you go, there you are. So making sure you focus on the health of your spirit is so important because truly I think happy people, like genuinely spiritually happy people, can be thrown into a jail cell, solitary confinement, and still somehow find peace, joy, and happiness.
Yeah.
And that is because they have tended to the garden of their spirit and their soul. A couple Sundays back, our pastor did a helpful little list of 5 things to sort of like look at and self-evaluate based on a scale of 1 to 5. We did it individually and then again with a few of our close friends, and it was extremely insightful. So let's do it together. If you want to do it with us, join us, grab a pen and a piece of paper and write these 5 things down. And this is for you. You don't have to share it in the comments or discuss it. Like, this is for you to just take a moment to evaluate the health of these 5 areas of your life. So the first one was your spiritual health. The second one was relational health. Third was your financial health. Fourth was your physical health. And 5th was the health of your soul. I think that this is most importantly for the individual. So I don't want to share our particular answers and like dissect those really deeply, but we can talk about whether they were high or low on our scale, just the importance of them. So obviously we just went over your spiritual health. So were you, when you evaluated yourself, high or low on that scale?
I was kind of right down the middle. I was quite average. I could be worse, but I could also be a lot better. So I definitely think I need to grow in this. But yeah, I was kind of right down the middle.
Yeah. I think for me, I've always been a spiritual person. I am a pastor's kid, but even then I kind of had to find my spirituality myself along the way of growing up. And I think this is the area where I spend most of my focus. So mine was high. I would say my spiritual health is quite good right now. What about relational health with your friends and your spouse and just any sort of relationship you have? Was your health high or low?
Well, this one's kind of tricky because I feel like it's almost 2 categories.
It's true. It should be split into 2 if you are married.
Right. Because with you, my relational health is really high. But my relational health with people outside is low, and that's not only because of quarantine. I would say even outside of quarantine, it wasn't super healthy in the sense of I didn't probably communicate or just spend enough time with people outside of you.
Yeah, I think it's hard because we are such good friends. We are truly the couple that feels that we are best friends. But it is important to have friends outside of your spouse as well. I think you made a really good point in kind of separating, if you are married, kind of that relationship and comparing it to the relationships with others, because those are different. I would say with you, it was high. I think we have just grown a lot during this quarantine season, more than I could have ever imagined. I feel like we kind of always continue to grow and learn how to work better together, and that surprises me every time. Like that it could be more, that it could be better, that we could improve. It's just it's super great. So I would say really high in that regard. And then when it comes to other people, I think again that is a deeply rooted part of my personality, is others and community and checking in on people. So even in this quarantine season, I would say that was really high marked for me as well, because I have been FaceTiming, I've been using Marco Polo, I've been texting, I've been calling, I've been visiting with people using good social distancing practices, meeting at parks and staying, kind of further away, but still seeing people face to face if possible. So I think, my marks were still kind of high in that area.
And what about financial health?
We do our finances together. So both of us were low in the financial health, but we are actively working on and continuing to evaluate and reevaluate and learn.
We took a financial peace class, so we learned a lot.
We've mentioned this before. We will probably continue to mention that class. It's amazing. Find one near you if you can. It's so worth it. I think it was wise of our pastor to bring up financial health, and people might say like, oh, but it's not about money and stuff like that, but it is helpful, and it is less stressful and more peaceful if you steward, and it is biblical to steward what you have well. Yeah. And I think that's something we've learned. Yeah. It allows you to be generous and giving like you want to be, and like the Bible talks about, when you steward what you have well. If you give to where then you're in a deficit and then you need others to give to you, that's not necessarily helpful or making the world a better place in any kind of a way. So we've just learned a lot. Physical health.
Yep.
Yeah. Again, lower marks. Definitely for me, I have not really addressed my physical health or really taking care of myself with intention for a long time, I think.
Mine was average. And I just, again, I could be worse, but I could be a lot better. And I definitely have room for improvement, for sure.
I feel like that is an underrated component to happiness and joy. Self-discipline, though it seems restricting in the moment, in the long run, it produces great, consistent joy. Last was soul health. You could even say your mental health, your internal man. Where do you rank in that?
Mine's pretty high. With this quarantine, I think we've kind of really built some systems that work for us to feel accomplished, to feel peace, to feel fulfilled every day. Obviously, we get along really well, so spending time together has been great.
Yeah, it helps with the soul when you do it right. My marks in the soul category were also pretty high. I think, again, according to all the things you mentioned, we really focus on making sure that our mental health is in check. We check with each other. How are you feeling? How are you doing? Those constant checks are important, because if you just go off of what has always been or the last thing that someone says, like, people change, we fluctuate. So those check-ins are incredibly important with either a spouse or a close friend or a family member, somebody that you trust. You should definitely do that on the regular.
Again, we are only scratching the surface on this conversation.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of conversations. They never truly end. And we hope that you continue this conversation and many more.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.